Well, thank you very much for those kind words, and I'm delighted to be here today. As you know, we've had some challenges in the news yesterday, but you know, as we focus on the future here moving forward and the regional connectivity, I think it's important that the agencies get together and discuss, you know, the future of public transportation and how the region is going to stay connected as the region continues to grow. And it was my pleasure to be, you know, called to sit in for my general manager, Grace Krenikin, who has been called away to deal with the derailment at Concord. So with that, I thought I would spend a little bit of time talking about our extension, since we're here talking about the regional connectivity and the future, you know, transit getting to and from Silicon Valley. So, and I wanted to just a little bit on BART, our extension project to Warm Springs. As you just heard, the district carries about 400,000 riders daily, and we think that that's going to continue to grow. You know, the last 2 years the district has experienced 6% ridership growth, and we think that's going to continue to grow as people make a conscious decision of getting out of their autos as best they can and take public transportation. And it's incumbent on our agencies as well as other agencies to make those opportunities there for people to do that. And one way we're doing that is with our BART extension to Warm Springs. So on the left here you can see that, you know, that's our regional map here. As the moderator just pointed out, we run about 100+ miles in our system, 5 different lines, 44 different stations. And to the right is a blow-up, and this is the Fremont extension heading south in the East Bay, picking up from Fremont all the way down to a new station at Warm Springs, where we will tie into the project that VTA is undertaking. So a little bit more about the project there. The slide that you're looking at there is about accessibility, and I'll get into that a little bit. But in general, you know, it's really 2 projects that we've undertaken there. One, a design bid build of a tunnel through Central Park in Fremont, which would not have been possible but for the cooperation and teamwork between the district, our board of directors, the city of Fremont, and their elected officials, and the trade-offs and agreements that were made to enable that project to be built through really an environmentally sensitive Central Park, the city of Fremont, which allowed us, they agreed to that. They did some constructions for an overpass, allowed us to go forward with this, which allowed us to continue the extension to tie into Silicon Valley heading south. So you'll hear a little bit today about, from all of us in different aspects, about how we work together. And it's just not our agencies, but it's about the communities that we touch along the way, and it's about the organizations that we touch along the way. So I just wanted to make sure that we kind of frame that up. It's just not our 3 agencies. It's about everybody that the public transportation touches along the way, and it really is a partnership. Let's see here. So the next slide, this is, you can read through the bullets here, but the takeaway I think on this slide is, I think what you'll hear a little bit today from me and from everybody else here is the importance of access and the importance of an access plan. You know, what's laid out in front of you on the slide there is really the basis of an access plan. We didn't call it an access plan when we put this together, but that's in fact what we did. How are people, all modes of, going to get to the, to the station? So you start with how our peds are going to get to the station. You start how are bicyclists going to get to the station. How are we going to handle public transit, our local providers getting to the station? How is the kiss and ride going to be handled, dropping off? And then how is the GP traffic going to get there, and where are they going to park, and how is that all going to interact? And really that's an access plan to the station, and that's kind of what the slide is intended to represent there, and that's how we kind of put together the Warm Springs South Fremont Station, and you can see there, not that this is a big feature of this presentation, but about the placemaking elements at the station to draw people, that people want to take public transportation. And it's going to be a very beautiful station there with art, a very prominent artist, and some glass panels at the station there. So here's some benefits of the project that I thought were important to bring to the group's attention, and a lot you'll hear about and probably in the Q&A, but you know, probably one of the best benefits of public transportation and overall is just to reduce and relieve traffic congestion and enhance you know, people's out there in the public taking public transport and reducing greenhouse gas emissions and reducing, you know, society's reliance on energy consumption. You know, as fossil fuels, you know, continue to decline and the prices going up, if we make alternatives equal to excess, the more likely are that we'll see increased ridership and people coming to the stations. And the last thing on Warm Springs Station, it really is. It's a gateway to Silicon Valley, and it's a gateway to Santa Clara County, and we wanted to make a statement as such. Other aspects that I know all three of the agencies at the table are pretty much in their day-to-day thinking, you know, about sustainability. And, you know, what our projects and our vision is for sustainability is very integral into the transportation that we provide. And we're doing this at the Warm Springs Station. You know, we're going to have solar on site there, enough solar that's going to be able to power the station on a daily basis, fed back into the grid. That's a big deal. That's a huge improvement and forward-looking thinking that's being designed as part of this and will be built as part of that. Also, we're going to have electric charging stations for electric vehicles at the stations. You know, we tried, I believe the district tried this 10 or 15 years ago, but this is going to be our first time doing this again, that we're going to have that. You know, there'll be on-site stormwater treatment. We're going to be using recycled materials everywhere that we can. So it's really, you know, the title of the slide is BART Blue Goes Green. That really is what we're looking to do there. And then finally, I think this is my last slide, and I'll turn it over to Nuria with VTA. We always look to the future, you know, and that station that I just described there as the extension moves forward, you know, is gridded for future TOD. That did not go without any thinking. It also is we have allowed for, if there's success in the ACTC measure that's slated for 2014 here, for a future infill station in Irvington. And really, we are going to provide a very seamless transition on schedule and on budget for Nuria's project that's going to pick up at our station and head south into Santa Clara County. And right now, we are set to be in revenue service at the end of 2015.
Terrific. Thanks very much. Great. So So our next speaker is Nuria Fernandez, who's the General Manager for the Santa Clara Valley Transportation Authority, or VTA. And as the General Manager and Executive Officer, Nuria plans, organizes, directs, and administers all functions of VTA. Basically, she's the boss. With the policy director.
Just like the show.
She has overall responsibility for all divisions of VTA required to implement key programs, including the expansion of bus and rail service throughout Santa Clara County, construction of various major transportation facilities, the extension of the BART system, as Mr. Powers just described, and planning and construction of highway and other related projects. So VTA has a larger mandate in terms of various different kinds of transportation systems than BART does. She's also responsible for the transit legislation policy development and is the intergovernmental liaison for VTA. Ms. Fernandez comes to VTA with a long history as well, with a senior executive with over 30 years of experience in the transportation field in a professional career that includes planning, design, construction of mass transit systems, airport operations, and policy development for federal transportation systems. She previously served as the Chief Operating Officer for the New York State Metropolitan Transportation Authority, or MTA, where she was responsible for overall security, as well as development of its capital and environmental sustainability programs, federal and state government affairs, and management oversight of MTA's 5 operating agencies and its capital construction. She also was involved at O'Hare Airport and was an official with the U.S. Department of Transportation, involved in rail expansions in Chicago and Washington, D.C. She also has a college background in Illinois,
yes.
Civil engineering. So, Mike, I haven't gotten to your bio yet, but we'll see if you were in Illinois as well.
You don't even probably have my best thing. We'll get to that.
Where Ms. Fernandez got a Bachelor's of Science in Civil Engineering from Bradley University and an MBA from Roosevelt University in Illinois. She is on the board of directors of several different organizations, the American Public Transit Association and the Mineta Institute's Board of Trustees down here in Silicon Valley. And I think the last piece of her bio that I want to call out is that she is a member of the Women's Transportation Seminar, which is an important organization based here in the Bay Area that provides a lot of information for women and all people working in the transportation field. Ms. Nuria Fernandez.
Good morning. And thank you very much, Jeff. You read that just like I wrote it. It was intended for summary, but I appreciate it. I am delighted to be here. I am just so overblown and overwhelmed by this beautiful part of the country. And I say that as I looked at the topic for today, for this conference, let's get moving. It moved me, because get moving really, what it does, it connotes energy, it connotes purpose, it connotes that there's a path to a goal. And the let's really ties in that it's all of us, it's inclusive. It's not just get moving, but actually all of us coming together to make a difference in this great region. As you heard earlier, well, before I get there, I just want to apologize for my voice. I was one of those individuals from the East who moved west and was patting ourselves on the back saying we got out just before the polar vortex. But what I didn't realize, that leaving the concrete island of Manhattan and coming to this beautiful Mediterranean weather, allergies will start. I never suffered from allergies in my entire life. I wouldn't tell you how old I am, but it just took a few months here to develop allergies. So forgive me, I do not have the flu. If I start sneezing, I'm not transmitting any type of germs. The Valley Transportation Authority is an important system. All of you know, all of you in this room who live in Santa Clara County are contributing towards that important transportation system. Thank you very much. One of the things that we are focusing on, and we're not losing track, is the fact that this is the fastest growing county in Northern California. And with that fast growth, not only comes people, but comes jobs and opportunities. And unless we're all given the opportunity to work from home and be able to order our groceries and download them in place, we're going to have to come up with solutions that starts to address how we're going to be undertaking this fast-paced growth. And those solutions cannot be done in a vacuum. You heard the word collaboration early this morning. You heard it again, and you'll continue to hear it. Because the only way we can move forward really is to implement those 3 C's. It's a collaboration, cooperation, and collegiality amongst all of the transportation decision makers, the transportation providers in this region. I've been in public transportation for my entire professional career. In transportation, in public transportation for 2/3 of that. And I love my buses and I love my train sets. But first and foremost, I'm a pedestrian. And I need to be able to move from point A to point B. And I currently I'm challenged where I work and where I live, because I could walk to work if there was a direct sidewalk that could get me from where I work to where I live. And that's one of the many aspects that we're going to have to start focusing on, is looking at transportation as a mobility that is inclusive, that is holistic, that encompasses pedestrians, encompasses cyclists, and then it looks at vehicles, and in those vehicles, of course, the surface transportation, which is our buses and our trains. The VTA, as many of you know, is not only a public transportation entity, but it's also the congestion management agency. So all of those challenges fall within our wheelhouse. And it's our responsibility at the VTA to work with the 15 cities within the county of Santa Clara to come up with solutions, and solutions that are going to help every single one of our residents, and then, of course, become an attractive destination for new corporations that are scouting the area, and they want to make sure that there's adequate mobility. We have recognized that the challenge, of course, is that we suffer from suburban sprawl. We have low densities, which works against the public transportation mission, and there's ample free parking. My goodness, if we could charge for all those parking spaces and put it into a fund, we will be able to not only resolve our public transportation challenges, but we'll be able to resolve some of our highway and freeway challenges as well. So that the free parking encourages more driving, because there's a place to put that vehicle. We also have the challenge of the widely dispersed employment areas and the business districts. There's not that natural connectivity. And what I was warned when I left the East to come West, the love affair with the automobile and that car culture. I have a 2003 vehicle that when I moved here had 50,000 miles, and I bought it in 2003. And I have racked up about 5,000 miles since I've been here, and I've been here 2 months. So it's pretty scary, but everything is so spread out, and that is a challenge that we have. We have a system, a service area, 326 square miles, where we're trying to provide services to 1.8 million people, and it's just a challenge. Everyone's spread out. No one's going to the same place. It's very different than cities that I have lived in, where you have that density, where there's a hub, and everything is developed so that you can feed people from the sleepy communities into the cities, downtown areas. Here we have pockets, and then we have cities, and we have cities with different land use plans, with different missions, with different intent. So I see as my challenge, and the challenge of the 2,000 men and women of the VTA, to come up with those solutions and to work collaboratively and cooperatively with all of you. Thank you. I didn't get the BART. They flashed the card.
This time I'll turn the microphone on. Our third general manager here is Mike Scanlon, who's the general manager and chief executive officer of the San Mateo County Transit District, or SamTrans. Mike was appointed CEO of SamTrans in November '99, so he has been working on these issues for many years, and he oversees bus operations, paratransit service, and all affairs of the SamTrans district. He's also executive director of the Peninsula Corridor Joint Powers Board, which runs the Caltrain service between San Francisco, San Jose, and all the way down to Gilroy. He also serves as the executive director of the San Mateo County Transportation Authority, which is responsible for administering the countywide half-cent sales tax for various transportation projects in San Mateo County. Before coming to San Mateo County, his previous experience included 26 years with the Port Authority of Allegheny County in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where he oversaw all transit operations, and 6 years previously as chief executive at Broward County Transit in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. To my knowledge, he did not go to college in Illinois. but I bring you Mike Scanlon. Very good. Oh, and just one before Mike.
But I voted in Illinois.
That's good. Many times.
Early and often.
Per election. If you have additional questions, please make sure to go ahead and write them on the cards and hand them in. Mike.
Thank you, Jeff, and thank all of you. It's a pleasure to be here with Nuria and Bob, and it's a pleasure to be here with you. I think that no matter what we get into later on when hopefully a discussion breaks out, certainly everybody's motives have to be pure. After all, there probably are one or two other things you could do on a 70-degree day with sunshine in Palo Alto, California. So your being here, I think, is testimony to the fact that you're very eager to try to engage in decisions that will create a better future for not only for today and tomorrow, but for future generations of Californians and future generations of Americans. You know, one of the things about our business is that our business, when you strip away everything else, it's a people business. It's people serving people, and all of us are hopefully learning to change the steps. I can tell you that I love the name, I love the work that Transform does, but I particularly like the name Transform because it is transformational, is what we really have to do to make things change. And I've been in the business for more years than probably I'd like to admit to, because you could do some simple math and figure out just how old I am. But I can tell you that in 1971, I had the privilege of attending a conference. It was called the 5th International Conference on Urban Transportation. It was held in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and it was the theme of that conference was mobility, the fifth freedom. And it has stuck with me all of these years, and I think it's just as timely, if not more timely today, than it was there. The reference, of course, to Franklin Delano Roosevelt's Four Freedom speech in the State of the Union in, I don't know, 41 or whenever the hell he made that speech. And the fact that those four freedoms really don't amount to much if you don't have the mobility to move around them. So since that time and in recent years, I think the public transportation industry is going in the general direction, albeit at a pace much slower than at least I came from the factory equipped to tolerate, of becoming not just transit people but mobility people. So I would submit that the name of this session, maybe it would be better that the future of Silicon Valley is riding on mobility as opposed to transit, because you need everything. You need, and the buzzword today is sustainability, but people have to live in different ways. I mean, we've had a great time messing up this planet, despite, you know, some are still doubters, but I'm going with the 95% of scientists who say that that we have not done real well by our planet. But for 50 or 60 years, the land development that we have today was driven, and our economy was driven by the automobile. And the land development patterns were driven by the automobile. I'm not anti-automobile at all. I've got 2 or 3 in my family. I don't know, the kids have some, but and to live and survive here, as Nuria just pointed out, you do need an automobile, but we need to move to live in more sustainable ways, and that has to take in everything in terms of public transit and pedestrians and bicycles and car sharing and a hierarchy of transit that goes from, I'm talking just surface transportation now because of the time limitations, but high-capacity BART-like systems that carry many people, commuter rail systems, express bus, main bus, shuttle bus, demand responsive, route variations, all of those kinds of things, because basically it's always getting people to where they are to where they need to be. But the richness of their lives will be determined in large part by the way that they can move around. Today, we can take whatever direction you'd like here. I can talk about my specific agencies. The Caltrain modernization program is very critical in that it's a 150-year-old system. Hopefully some of you were with us recently to celebrate. And just think about, speaking of Illinois, 150 years ago, the last time a president from Illinois was in the White House is when that line, 1 minute. My God, I came down here for 1 minute. There's someone here, but when Bob was up, they were saying done for a long time. So someone didn't stick a fork in him, but he was done. So what we can do is talk about CalMod or improvements to SamTrans. The real key here, though, is collaboration amongst ourselves, engagement with the public, and I think you would be shocked if you realized how well how much collaboration exists between the transit agencies themselves. I think a lot of people throw up their hands and say, you guys should talk to each other. God knows we do until we're blue in the face, and we try to do things. It may not always show that way on the street, but I assure you it's not for a lack of trying. So I guess with that, I'll shut up, and hopefully a conversation will break out and we can talk more later. Thank you.
I have the exciting job of combining a bunch of questions that we talked about in advance with all of your cards, and so I will do my best to sort through those and find cards that particularly that treat common themes. But I'm going to start by asking a question to each of you in turn to ask, understanding, you each used the word collaboration or cooperation somehow in your talk. And we heard from Dr. Pastor in the morning session. He said, you're going to hear a lot about collaboration. No surprise, we did. He also said, make sure when you're doing collaboration that is a collaboration which I think he used the phrase, it's principled. It's conflict with principles. It's figuring out how you make sure all the different needs are being met at the same time. So understanding with that concept in mind and understanding that all three of you either serve Silicon Valley or, in BART's case, soon will, how important do you consider regional collaboration between agencies to be? And could you give an example of that recently? Bob.
Well, obviously, the answer to the question, in my opinion, I think is without collaboration, we're not going to get there. We're not going to get to, if I could use the word Mike just mentioned, to the mobility that we're going to need as the region continues to grow and expand. So, but for collaboration, it'll be a long, slow slug of it. So, a good example that I'm involved in right now, an excellent example, is where the Warm Spring project ends and where VTA's project begins. You know, there is a tie-in point, and we need to be done with our project in such a time that we can hand it off, my team and my contractor, over to Nuria's team and her contractor to allow her enough time to make the connections so that she's in revenue service by her schedule. So we had a partnering session. You know, we meet regularly, the teams, and we're looking at ways that we can turn over the south end, if we can, quicker to allow for that seamless transition to get to her revenue service, to get transit down to Silicon Valley in a very timely manner. So those discussions go on. They're very emotional, very heated discussions, but you know, at the end of the day, you know, we're going to get to the solution where, you know, we're going to be in revenue service in end of 2015, and Nuria's project will be in revenue service on her scheduled completion date, and we'll be providing transit to Silicon Valley. So that's a perfect example of the collaboration that happens, you know, maybe not in the public eye, but certainly behind the scenes and really on a day-to-day basis.
I see collaboration, not only is it important in the word and what it means, but in the reality that we're dealing with. The transportation network for this region is significant. It's important. If you think about our network as the human body, and where you need every part of that body to be moving at the same pace, the same level of energy, so that there is seamless transportation. If a member of the body is not working well, then everything starts to slow down. And that's what our network is. And that's why it's important for us not only to talk early and often, but for us to also plan together. So the emphasis on regional planning is not intended to just demonstrate that there is a need for it, but actually to put in practice the principle of regional planning and how important it is that we come to this, we make decisions that can help improve and provide a better quality of transportation mobility in our region. Our region is one of the most critical, and as I'm thinking about Silicon Valley, we are the hub. The VTA is the hub for Silicon Valley transportation, but that hub only works as well as Caltrain and ACE and these other services that come into Silicon Valley and provide workers into Silicon Valley, provide those who want to come into Silicon Valley for whether it's play, fun, education, that it's not one transportation system, but a multiple of transportation systems. Our relationship with Caltrain is a very good example of regional collaboration, and not only do we provide financial support to Caltrain, but we also work very closely with them on capital improvements, because if their system doesn't work well, it impacts ours. As I'm reminded by Mike on many occasions, that most of the people that they bring into Silicon Valley usually get on our system for the majority of them do. So we have to have that handoff has to be seamless, and that requires a lot of conversation, it requires a lot of planning, it requires a lot of investment.
I think that the collaboration in the Bay Area, despite what you may think, is better than it is anywhere certainly in the continental United States. The general managers of the organizations, we meet at least a month, once a month, and talk about a host of issues and decide things. I'll throw out just a couple of quick examples. You just heard about the Warm Springs extension. Critical funding for that was switched from Regional Measure 2, much to the chagrin of Jim Bigelow here, from Dumbarton Rail over to Warm Springs, because it made more sense for the region to spend money that way. So the, quote, principals involved all agreed that that was a good expenditure. On Caltrain modernization, there's a 9-party funding agreement that was cobbled together. To get 9 parties, 9 agencies to sign off on a funding plan, to me, I don't even know how you get 9 people to agree to go to where to eat, let alone come up with a complicated funding plan of that nature. Those are just 2 of the examples that we have, but I can tell you that the collaboration is done frequently, it's done meaningfully. Yes, there is conflict of times, because how are you going to spend this money? But in the end, you have got to say, what is the greater good? As I said at the beginning, we're in the people business. What is the best for the people, the residents, the people that live in our communities? What's the best boom for the buck and for the long-term vision? And a lot of times that means I'm not going to get what I want, Nuria's not going to get what she wants, and Bob or Grace aren't going to get what they want, but what's best for the region, and that has to be the heaviest weighted consideration that you have in all of your deliberations.
Terrific. Thanks very much. So I wanted to see if I could direct the next question, maybe start it with you, Nuria. What would you say are the 1 or 2 most important new potential sources of funding to maintain and improve transit systems?
In Santa Clara County, we are fortunate to have had Measure A pass 2000. So we, from a sales tax perspective, having sales tax be identified for for transportation improvements, I think that is a phenomenal movement. I appreciate all of you who made that possible. Many communities around this country are still grappling with the fact that there is not sufficient local dollars to bring to the table when it's time to leverage those dollars with federal dollars. I do not have 2 examples to share with you, but I can tell you that one of the biggest challenges that we're facing is the availability of federal dollars for major major infrastructure improvements. We are in a crossroads right now. As many of you know, the Transportation Trust Fund is going to be hit pretty hard this August, starting with the highway, then followed by transit. It's going to run out of money. And the existing reauthorization bill that's going to make it possible for us to even have a serious conversation around an extension of the implementation of Phase 2, that is bringing the BART service into Silicon Valley proper from the Berryessa station into San Jose is going to be predicated on the availability of continued federal dollars. So the conversation right now is really at the federal level, and for those of us that are involved is looking at what areas can the federal government start to concentrate on so that we can grow the Highway Trust Fund and not be so dependent on the gas tax. What are some of the other options that will be available? So that's how I see the challenge.
Terrific. Either of the others of you want to talk about
I'd like
potential funding sources?
On the federal. The federal is so critical. It is so urgent. I just don't know. I guess with each passing day, I get continually amazed at how this nation could let its infrastructure fall into such a state of disrepair. Earlier this week, Moody's downgraded Garvey bonds, which is grant anticipation notes for the federal highway system, because the gas tax is not, it's broke. And it's broke because Americans have done the right thing. Namely, they are driving less miles, and you have a flat tax per gas, so it's generating less money, and the manufacturers of vehicles have manufacturing vehicles that get 3 and 4 times what gas mileage they used to get. So guess what? The flat tax of 18.3 cents, which was last raised when Bill Clinton, who was Nuria's boss, had the courage, and that Congress had the courage to raise the tax. It has not been raised since then. The infrastructure in this country is, to say that it is, I don't even know how to describe the condition of some of the bridges that are in this country, the highways that are in this, and more importantly, for our audience, putting it into the real mobility in the urban transportation programs. Something's got to be a wake-up call to either get the federal government to have the courage that it needs to levy taxes flat on a gasoline or vehicle miles traveled or something, or they're going to have to get out of the program altogether. And I don't know what that does to the interstate system, because then we could take that money that we invest and try to do it more on a state or more importantly on a regional level, because regions are really what really happens right now. The other big opportunity out there is cap and trade. And cap and trade, I give a very technical, dissertation really on that. It's people that put cooties into the air pay for the privilege of putting those cooties in the air, and you invest that in things that make less cooties go into the air. So it's, and it's much like I mean, the cost that we pay to drive our automobiles, we only pay a little, 50% maybe in user fees, and the rest is out of general fund. Just to give you a feel, over the last, I think it's 4 years, we have put north of $50 billion from the general fund in the United States of America into the Highway Trust Fund because Congress has lacked the courage to raise the gas tax. And this, while gas tax, the price of gas has fluctuated $1 or $2. I mean, you can drive to the store and see gas, at one price and come back 20 minutes later and it's up to $0.25. Yet we won't put a few cents into it. So, I mean, I guess I'm an eternal optimist because I think something's got to happen to get people to wake up. And maybe I'll talk about that a little bit later. But
thanks much, Mike. And I will also point all of you to the blue flyer. Thanks for making our pitch for us. The blue flyer that encourages you to take action to ensure that the cap and trade system in California remains robust and gets spent on projects that will actually reduce carbon emissions. I'm going to ask the next question to Nuria, as I know that she has to leave soon, has another engagement to get to. But I have several questions that are essentially about bus rapid transit. Sunita says, I want something that will help me switch from car onto transit and more frequent rail and bus service. What kinds of plans? I know Curitiba has great plans. Can we do something like that? And another question that's specifically about how do you intend on directing VTA to work with the diverse stakeholders along El Camino Real to create a world-class transit option along the Grand Boulevard?
So, two very important questions, and I have been to Curitiba, so I know exactly how that bus rapid transit system works. As a matter of fact, many of the cities in this great country have tried to emulate it. And once we complete our bus rapid transit, we'll have the first real bus rapid transit in this region. So we're really looking forward to it. The bus rapid transit technology is one that's going to allow us to provide the most cost-effective way of moving people much faster than buses, but it's still a rubber tire. And one of the things that we have done at VTA in our planning is taking a look at what are some of these high uses corridors, and that's exactly where bus rapid transit is. There's a flyer that says go BRT. Yes, I'm all for it. So we've looked at the corridors, and El Camino Real is one of our corridors. The process, and I'm going to blend both of the questions together. Bus rapid transit is moving forward. We believe in it, and we're going to deliver it. The first phase, which is our Santa Clara Alum Rock, we're going to be breaking ground very soon, and we hope that all of you would join us. The second phase requires us, we have a plan, but it requires us to have more conversations with the community. And one of the things that I've done working together with our board chair, Clara, is looking at how we make priorities of a number of areas, and this being one of them. We have, what I've done is I have taken the community outreach that was geared towards project specific and turned that community outreach into a mechanism to talk to the communities not only about the projects but other things that the communities feel that are of concern to them as it relates to VTA service. And what we have learned is we have all these projects, we told them they were coming, but once we decided to move forward, we didn't really go back and have that conversation and saying, okay, we're ready to move forward. Is there something that has changed where the people who were here that says, yes, this is exactly how it should operate and where it should be and how it and what your plans are for these lanes, are those the same people that are there today that are the ones that are going to be experiencing the construction and the shifting in the lanes and the reduction and the possible increase in congestion, because it does require either dedicated lane or a combination of BRT and vehicles within the same lanes. We want to make sure that the BRT system and its service delivers the intended goal. And to get there, we really need to be mindful of some of the challenges that we have with the communities and working with the communities so that they can help us think through better how to deliver this service. We're doing it for them. We're not doing it for ourselves.
And can you maybe elaborate on that? Or what are ways that community organizations, such as people who might be holding up a yellow flyer that says Go BRT, what are ways that people can engage in that process and help make sure that that BRT project is the best it can be, that it really is a true BRT with dedicated lanes, and it really will provide a convenient alternative to driving?
We certainly love having advocates. It's always very important with any project to have advocates, to have people who say, you know, we believe in this, we stand with you, and we can help you. Those advocates live in the communities where there may be not 100% support, or that there may be some a willingness to make modifications that may in fact take away from some of the benefits of what a true BRT is. So there are multiple ways that can be done. You can reach us through a website saying, I have an idea, I have an organization, I have access to my HOA, and we can pull together a meeting, because we want to not only use the existing structures, that is working with our elected officials and coming to their monthly or weekly meetings, but we want to be able to touch every community group, every individual, every church, Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, Chambers of Commerce, all organizations, and have that conversation.
Terrific. Thanks very much. So I know Ms. Fernandez has to leave, so please, if you'd give her thanks very much for having come and given us some help. Great. So I think the next question I'm going to go to, Bob, I'm going to start with you, if I can. Okay. Want to talk about development around transit stations. You're the Assistant GM for Planning and Development, and several people had questions that related to development, so I'm going to kind of mush them into one and see how many of them you answer at the same time. Okay. So the overarching question is, what do you think your agency's role is in creating equitable and sustainable transit-oriented development, thinking particularly about the land that your agency owns? There are, and then some other people asked some sort of specifics, add-ons to that. What is your agency doing to encourage affordable housing in those developments? And when your agency is involved in a joint development project to build new homes or offices or shops around one of your stations, would you support requiring the developer to provide transit passes and to reduce how much parking they provide, so that you don't end up, as Nuria described, many of the Silicon Valley having seas of ample free parking, and instead we have areas that people walk and get on their transit?
Okay, so let me try to tackle that with an example that we're doing right now, and it's really about connectivity and mobility too. It's at Millbrae, and we have a development. We have an ENA exclusive negotiation agreement that we're working. ENA? It's an exclusive negotiation agreement that we had an RFP out on the street, and we brought in a developer, and the developer is Republic Urban, and we're working with them at the Millbrae station, and our partner, of course, is the City of Millbrae, and so there's 3 parties working there on a development, looking at development potential at Millbrae. And I'm just using Millbrae as one example. We're doing it at San Leandro. We're having discussions at Bayfair. You know, right coming up could be Lake Merritt, could be West Oakland. There's an RFP out on the street for West Oakland right now. But so there's challenges there. You know, BART owns real estate along our right-of-way, and there, you know, we get asked by groups, developers, you know, if there's opportunities to partner. So we'll put out an RFP out on the street, and we like to be very open and transparent. We try not to be in the business of sole sourcing it to any one group. Put it out on the street. But what we're looking for are a couple of things, and it's kind of independent of location. One, certainly all mix of housing, you know, affordable, market rate housing, a mix. Too much of one thing generally doesn't make a good TOD. We're looking for retail, we're looking for commercial, we're looking for a mix of land uses at those locations. We're looking for good urban design. We are not looking for, we're looking for activating the street adjacent to the TOD and making it a very livable community. And making it so that people want to live there, and looking at the parking requirements. You know, my board of directors, I work for Grace, and she has, we have an elected board, and, you know, they've taken, I think, a very bold position that, you know, one-for-one parking replacement is not the norm. You know, you saw the slide that I put up here before, and I referenced the term an access plan. You know, that's exactly what we're doing at Millbrae. It's not, we are not saying it's one-for-one parking replacement. You know, and Mike said, you know, it's not that anybody's against the automobile or anybody's, you know, more in favor of one transportation over the other. It's looking at how everything meshes together, and so an access plan looks at how all modes of transportation are going to access that station, be it Millbrae, San Leandro, West Oakland, you know, and that's going to set, you know, how much parking should be at the station. Is it going to be mixed-use parking with the residents at the station? You know, when they're gone and working, maybe the BART, people who are coming to BART could use those stations or those spots during the day. So that we're looking at all of those, you know, and we're looking at maybe, you know, commercial spaces closer in to where the BART system comes in, you know, and maybe if you look at it on a circle, you know, and the BART station is the target, you know, right around the station, commercial and retail activities, maybe a little bit further out, a mix of residential uses, be it a hotel or housing, diversified housing there, but to try to build a community around the BART stations. And that's what we're evolving into right now. And there's actually been some discussion about looking at our model. Generally, as a lot of you know, working with the cities, it's their land use. You know, they have jurisdiction over the land use. We have, you know, we can have discussions with the cities about, you know, 5 stories, 10 stories, 15 stories, but really they have control of, you know, the density and the height limitations. So, and then we work with the developer on updating the city's specific plan in the area. But, you know, maybe we are looking at where it's our property, that we go and get the entitlements and we become perhaps the contractor, for lack of a better analogy, and not the developer going to get the entitlements, which leads the district into a little bit more of control of the future of the TOD site. So, you know, that's just a discussion that I had just yesterday with the general manager, and she told me to give it some thought. So those are some of the ways that we're attacking TOD and trying to make TOD a staple, you know, in the BART transit system. And as each one comes online, you know, a lot of them have been around a long time and they're just wrapping up. But the newer ones coming online, we're trying to incorporate all these ideas.
Bob, if I could pick up on a piece of that. Yeah. When BART, if BART were to put itself in the position of being that master developer or contractor you called it, what kinds of goals would BART be trying to particularly achieve in that way? Would it see affordable housing as a particularly important kind of development to make sure to have, because of knowing that, as Manuel showed us the graph of transit ridership by income and much higher transit ridership at low incomes, is that something that's a high priority for BART?
It is a high priority, and there should. That should be looked at every TOD opportunity. The availability or the opportunities for low-income housing at TOD sites within the district. And as we go back to the board, I know on Millbrae, it's probably on the resolution one of the very first bullets on that ENA that we have with the Republic to look at a very robust mix of land uses there, including affordable housing. So it's very important to BART and our board of directors. So that's a key for us.
Terrific. And so do you think it's possible that BART might see it as an advantage to have a policy or a practice of setting a certain percentage of development at any given station or at the district's stations as a whole to try and achieve a minimum percentage of affordable housing? Is that a possible policy?
It is, but that, as soon as you start talking there and pivoting right there, so that, you know, we would have to take that to the board and make sure that the board's on, you know, they are a policy board there. But that is something that has been discussed at least into some detail, you know, in front of the board, you know, and it would have to be, in my opinion, I'm just talking off, just thinking right now, you'd have to think that through a little bit because you know, each opportunity might be a little bit different, so it would have to be crafted in a way to be a little bit flexible moving forward, and it would have to be crafted in a way, you know, that it's being responsive to the cities that we're doing business with.
Terrific. Thanks much. Mike, did you want to pick up on the question on development opportunities around your stations?
I think that it really is getting into some real core issues of what's important and why it's important. You know, when you stop to realize that most of the early street railway companies were really started to provide transportation to open up suburban subdivisions where they sold homes. And the people that built the street railways were the people that were the developers. So with that as a backdrop, and when you take and you look right now in Hong Kong, Hong Kong actually does, more than anybody in the world, they develop land around their stations and around their system, and they do other things to capture. They actually make money and are sold on the traded on the stock market, the transit system in Hong Kong. It's the only one in the world to my knowledge. Those are important things to say there. The value capture, I mean, there are studies in recent years where the value of real estate closely situated to major transportation facilities is greater, goes up faster, retains its value. So all of those things we have to figure out a way to do that. Governor Brown has in his budget proposal talked about infrastructure financing districts and some things that could be used to both finance transit and also to accommodate housing. But when you talk about affordability, talk about the price of housing, it's a very basic function of supply and demand. There isn't anywhere near enough supply of housing, so basically all housing is totally unaffordable. And if we're going to address that, the Silicon Valley Index was just released a week or two ago by Russ Hancock's joint venture Silicon Valley. And I think, if I remember, 40 or 50,000 new jobs created just in Silicon Valley during 2013. And against that, I think in the same area there were 8,000 new housing starts. So, you know, I mean, I went to school a long time ago, but my math tells me that that's a problem that's going to continue to exacerbate and get worse. So the issue of providing affordable housing as part of it is a cross-cutting issue into other, it's not just a transportation problem per se, but it's cross-cutting to how we as a society function, and it plays right into the haves and the have-nots, and I mean, and all of that. So I'm not going to, you know, I don't think I want to puncture that surface here this morning, unless somebody else wants to, because I have a lot of thoughts on that, but that's probably outside the purview of what my 3 boards of directors would want me to be talking about. But transit and land use are, and always probably will be, inextricably linked. And the relationship between them, I personally don't think that you should legislate it, but that you should promote it through good examples when you find progressive cities that want to utilize and take full advantage of the proximity of transit. In the case of Caltrain and changing the propulsion system from diesel to electric means that once you have an electric train, it is so friendly in the immediate area that you can develop, and BART can do this too, you can develop properties and residential and mixed use and all of that, not only near it, but right on top of it. I mean, you can be in the basement, as the transit system's in the basement, and you can build housing and all that directly above it. I mean, you could literally envision trips where it's not so important here, but in other parts of the world it is, where you could have a work-to-home trip without ever going outdoors.
It's great. So I hear enthusiasm, a little bit of caution from both of you on the policy, whether it's that your board would have to be the one to make that decision, or also making sure to consider context sensitivity. I got a note card that's basically a jargon alert for us up here saying, what is TOD? So TOD, or transit-oriented development, is what both of these gentlemen have been talking about, of trying to make sure we put our homes, our jobs, our shops, offices, dry clean, what have you, putting them near our transit stations, near the places where we can get around on public transit, and making sure to design them well so that they fit in with the transit system. So thank you.
A word of caution in, though. Every time you try to have a conversation about transit-oriented development, some people think that we want to, or social, engineers or scientists that want to take everybody out of their existing home site as we know it and put them and stack them and pack them, they call it. But that's not what it's all about at all. It's giving people a choice. This may shock you, but people of my age are looking for easier lifestyles without a yard and a house and all the things that come with it. But it's a balancing of putting housing near transit so those that choose to go there can go there, while those that choose to want to, raise their families in a suburban feeling are still free to do that. And in fact, by making these options and these choices available, it frees up more real estate available for those that choose to live the other way. So it's not one of these where we're sitting up here designing how people should live.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think we have a couple of other sessions that will go into more detail on opportunities for transit-oriented development. I want to address the next question, actually, still at you, Mike, so keep the mic over there. And it's about, you referred to the Dumbarton Rail Project and the pulling funding away from it as having been an example of regional collaboration. So you have a couple of people here asking to please talk about the Dumbarton Rail Corridor and funding for it. What are the possibilities, how to get the political will and remaining funds to move this project forward? I think many of us who have watched the experience with that project in particular know it's not exactly clear how it's going to move forward. Do you have a prediction of what will be the status of the Dumbarton Rail Project 10 year, excuse me, maybe I should say the Dumbarton Corridor? Do you have a prediction for what the status of that will be 10 years from now?
I don't, at my age, I don't predict anything 10 years from now, but I can tell you that, what it was 10 years ago and what it is today, and there really, there has been the preliminary work has been done on an environmental impact report, but it is not ripe to put it up for clearance, and the reason that it's not ripe for that, and I'll try to avoid the technical stuff, is that according to the Federal Transportation Authority, Federal Transit Administration, we don't have a funding plan, and that's it. And really, this gets back to some basics too. When you have demand that's this big, and you have supply that's this big, you have got to put your supply where it's going to make more sense. In the case of Dumbarton, funds that when Regional Measure 2 was passed were envisioned to have Dumbarton, the corridor, on a much faster track, pun intended, I guess. At that time, though, it became very apparent that you needed to get the BART extension. More people would ride. It would have more of an impact on reducing traffic across the bay by getting people onto there. Similarly, we're looking now at taking some of the Dumbarton funds and putting it into the Caltrain electrification, because, again, it's going to be a higher, better, more immediate use. But Dumbarton corridor has not been abandoned. In fact, the MTC is going to be making recommendations to help the existing bus alternative. There is a coalition of agencies. Nuria is one, and I'm not sure if BART's in that coalition or not, but certainly Nuria is, and the San Mateo County Transit District is. Will be, I think there's about $14 million they're going to be programmed to buy some new buses and to start building the continue to build ridership through that corridor, so that if and when you can get this other rail plan resurrected, you will have a built-in base, hopefully an increasing base of riders that then you could shift over. The ridership projections were not encouraging in the environmental impact report. So it's a project whose time probably will come, but I'm not sure exactly when that time is. And if I try to represent a date, I have no basis, no foundation for me. I'd be like a weatherman. They don't know what it's going to do either, but they're bold enough to stand there and tell you what's going to happen, and come back the next day and tell you again, even though what they told you the day before didn't happen. I'm going to avoid that.
Thanks, Mike. We'll hold you to that prediction.
Okay.
Bob, I'll bring the next one back over to you. It's a question about transit coordination, and this comes from Yorico. Many metropolitan regions around the world with multiple transit operators, and we can certainly say that the Bay Area with, I've lost track, is it 27 or 29 now, transit operators, but we've got a lot. So many regions around the world have a transit coordination authority with a board that could be made up of some elected officials, some transit officials. What do you think of an authority like that? Is that something that would be beneficial in the Bay Area to try and make transit more seamless in payment, transfers, et cetera?
Oh, sorry.
Well, I think certainly there would be some benefit there. There would be some challenges in trying to bring or to evolve to take from what we are now to get to that spot. But I think if we step back just a little bit, I think something like that or a group like that would help the region set its priorities. We heard a little bit earlier today about supply and demand, and if we say supply and demand, if the supply is the amount of funding that's out there, and demand are all the needs that are out there, making sure that the region has whether it's agreed to or, kind of at least acknowledged that these are the priorities of the region that should be competing against a very limited supply of funding. And whether that's done by a broad umbrella group or just, by anchoring to groups like the MTC, anchoring to groups like the Bay Area Business Council and other groups, anchoring to community groups, community organizations such as SPUR, to try to make sure that the region is speaking in one voice, on that supply and demand curve, because there's very limited supply. And I think moving forward, it hasn't been discussed here so much, but there needs to be maybe a little bit more aggressive focus on state of good repair and asset management. The BART system, speaking for BART here, is 40+ years old. I think I heard Mike talking earlier, his system or elements of his systems are 140+ years old or 150 years old. So a group like that, or anchoring to MTC and Bay Area Council and the coordination here and groups like SPUR to get the word out about asset management, investing in state of good repair, because there are consequences of not investing into those, and that's a difficult nut to crack and to try to communicate to the public. The BART not investing in a substation. It's not a sexy thing going. It's not gonna gain a headline. But if we don't invest in replacing substation or elements of substation, the system might go down. The system goes down. We're not providing service. We're not providing the mobility and the connectivity, not only all throughout the Bay Area. So I think as we move forward, whether it's that broad group or just anchoring to the groups that we have, making sure that we know what the priorities are for the region, making sure that we're making smart investments in asset management, telling agencies about state of good repair and where the highest risks are, really needs to take a front seat, maybe, if for lack of a better term right now, as the region starts to better prioritize, their needs against the limited funding in the region.
Great, and what I hear you saying, if I got this on, what I hear you saying is that the most important aspect of our transit systems is whether they provide mobility, whether they provide connectivity to the people who want to ride on them. And the most important thing about that is the reliability, right. And making sure that the system is in a state of good repair. We've certainly seen that BART and several of the other systems around the region don't have a full funding plan for how they're going to pay to maintain their system over the next 20, 25 years. That's a big need. We've seen that sometimes those needs get traded off with the desires for, kind of, as you said, the sexier projects, building something new, whether it's an extension somewhere. How do you see each of your agencies balancing those needs, balancing the desire, often the kind of politically motivated desire for extensions and expansions versus what you know to be the very high importance of keeping reliability high?
Did you want him to answer?
Why don't you go ahead, Bob, and then...
Are you going to come back to that governance issue?
Sure, if you want. Okay. That would be great.
If you want my thoughts, that's okay.
Great.
That's okay too.
All right, go ahead, Bob. On the
answer. So yeah. it's a difficult balance. I think part of it is education. I think it's educating our elected officials. I think it's educating the public, it's educating staff, or staff being educated by the public and the elected officials about really, it's, as my GM says, it's the consequences of doing nothing as far as assets that are, well past their lifespan, and trying to bring those assets back up to a state of good repair. And it just needs to be balanced against the risks of not doing that to projects that are, a little bit more sell better in the papers or through the press and stuff like that. I think we're getting into that right now, and a tool to do that is asset management. And I know the agencies, a lot of agencies are very much pushing asset management, you know, to look at their infrastructure and to identify the major risks going, what the funding is required for those risks, and the consequences of not doing that. And I'm not saying that's a new science or that that's something new that, you know, the three of us have come up with. It's been around a long time. And it really needs to be, if you have a toolbox and you're fixing your house or something, it needs to be on the top shelf of your toolbox as you go into your fiscal year. We're just getting it. BART is on a fiscal year starting. We're going to just start talking about our fiscal year FY15 priorities, which start the beginning of July, you know, and how asset management sets the priorities for that fiscal year, you know, is going to be presented to the board, our board of directors, you know, for their input and their guidance to us as we move forward.
Great, thanks much. Mike, do you want to address either the expansion versus asset management?
Whatever you want.
Why don't you start with the expansion versus maintenance of state of good repair, perspectives on your experience with that?
Okay. As a lifelong transit practitioner, I can tell you that the first three most important things are safety, safety, and safety. And that has got to come number one. You have got to keep safe systems, or in the absence of funds to do that, you've got to have the courage to be able to tell the public and the policymakers that you can't run the system. You shut it down. That has to absolutely be the over thing. Secondly, it's got to be fix it first. It makes no sense at all if you got a hole in your roof to remodel the bathroom. It just, I mean, it's something that is unconscionable in simple life. Why would it be any different in public life? Yet it is. So we're going to build something else out to here that we don't have the money to maintain or operate when we neglect and let things go. So you've got to have fix it first. The asset management, he's right on. It's been around since, I guess, cavemen were writing on stones to fix the rock by the door. But, you know, with technology that we have today, we have just, we got a grant from the Federal Transit Administration. We'll be presenting our model where we just invented, you know, wrote our own new asset management, particular for our railroads. So we can tell you when exactly that tie was replaced. I mean, it's really fascinating what technology can bring to it. So to me, that's a clear answer. On the governance model, I would say at the beginning, to be cautious, there is no silver bullet out there. The two governance models that are most closely related to, as I understood the question, and it's too bad Nuria isn't still here, because she just worked for one of them, is the Metropolitan Transportation Authority in New York. It is a body that oversees the operating entities, New York City Transit, Long Island Railroad, Metro North, Staten Island Ferry, and Bridges and Tunnels. And so it acts sort of in that capacity. But no matter, and then the other is in Chicago, where you have the Regional Transit Authority, and then you have the Metro, which is the commuter rail, you have the Chicago Transit Authority, and you have PACE, which is suburban bus. That is, right now the governor has appointed a committee that I actually met with. They're figuring, and that's all broken. They, you know, that isn't working right, and they've had all kinds of scandals and problems. It always gets back to MTC takes a lot of, you know, hits here, but they do a real good job, in my opinion, even though I get madder than heck at them at times when I don't come out on top. And I'll go and continue to fight. What was it the speaker said? Conflict with principles. That's right. But MTC is doing, you know, the little bit of supply for those that may be biblically inclined, the loaves and fishes or whatever it was, and you just really can't do that. But I am a firm believer that policy and funding should be at a regional or a high level, but that service delivery should be managed as close to the point of customer consumption as possible. And I found that is that, you know, the first 26 years of my career were spent at the Port Authority of Allegheny County, which was an amalgamation of 33 private companies. And those 33 private companies were molded into one. But I can tell you, on the day that they became one, everybody except the Pittsburgh Railways Company, which was the largest of the 33 companies, got an enormous pay raise. And they got the loosest set of work rules that anybody ever had. So I'm not against it. I'm not necessarily for it. I'm just going to say it's not a silver bullet, and approach with caution. like your pet rattlesnake. Use a long stick.
Great. So I think we have time for one more question. In keeping with being here in the heart of Silicon Valley, we had a couple of questions that had to do with collaboration with the tech industry. So can you talk a little bit about how important it is to have relationships or partnerships with the tech industry? What kind of collaborations are being done with the private sector? Or maybe to put it a little simpler, there's Google buses, there's other private company shuttles. Do they complement your service or do they compete with your service?
You want me?
Sure, you go ahead and start, Mike.
I believe that, first of all, we have excellent collaboration with the private sector and with the leaders there. The Silicon Valley Leadership Group, Carl Gardino and his group, adopted a couple of years ago a very high priority of theirs is try to find a reliable source for Caltrain, a funding source, so that we can continue to run this. It's still it's a transit system that has no dedicated funding source. There's no tax or anything that's backing it. Secondly, I'm working currently with the Silicon Valley or joint venture Silicon Valley and pursuing something called the Grand Boulevard Initiative, which is a vision to try to create for the next generations of Californians, where we would take the El Camino Real, extend it into the Alameda, and extending into Mission Street in the north in Daly City, and to try through the adoption of some guiding principles and a very busy task force made up of 19 cities, 2 counties, labor, environmentalists, developers, etc., a coalition of the willing, where we try to create a vision of what that can be, and the conversion, because it's not a latent breaking news flash, but strip development is dead. It doesn't pencil. Economically, it's dead, and for the most part, it's pretty ugly too. So, I mean, there's a lot of things going in how you can develop and use that as a focal point, and that goes well. In terms of the Google buses and all that have been getting wrapped, I've been in the transit business a long time. I don't look at them as competitors because, number one, I have a rail system where in the peak hours right now, you have to stand. I mean, my deputy CEO sometimes can't get off the train in San Carlos. She lives in San Francisco, and it's so crowded she can hardly get off. We're trying to do some things like lease some cars, but to do the electrification and increase the capacity is good. But to my way of thinking, you know, you have publicly subsidized public transit, and if it's rich and full and others want to come to the party and bring their own resources, fine, let them come. Now, I'm not trying to get into the battle of where they load and unload and if they're causing traffic or whatnot, but I look at a bus, every time I look at a bus, public or private, I say there's 40 less cars in round numbers, and I think we all have a chance to sit on these beautiful freeways that we have here, but I don't know what's free about them because you just sit there. Back east they have things they call parkways, you know, and literally that's what we should be calling our things, parkways, you know. But I am an advocate of trying to coordinate all transportation, but if you were going to go play golf today, you'd need all your irons and all your woods. I think we need public subsidized buses, we need private buses and transportation, we need car sharing, van sharing, walking, pedestrians, bicycles. You need everything in the bag, particularly as jobs continue to grow. Anything that's good for Mother Earth and good for all of us, I think we got to find a way to manage it, work together, collaborate seems to be the word, and make sure that we take advantage of everybody's investment. So
you're looking for the all-of-the-above transportation strategy. Yes. Great. Bob, do you want to add anything to that on the work with tech companies?
Well, I think I just echo what Mike said, and another term that we use at the district about that, you know, whether it's the local tech companies or the local transit agencies, you know, bringing in to the BART stations to get into our system, we call it the last mile. You know, how are we making and providing for the local shuttles, transit agencies, you know, even bike and ped, that last mile? That means from the station to the home, you know, and it's not necessarily a mile, that's just the term that we're using, but you know, it's a partnership. You know, if people are trying to get to our system, not just our system, any public transportation system, you know, it's it's good to make it seamless. It's good to make it efficient and easy to use, easy, for the buses to come in, drop off, and take off, especially when they're coming in and using the system, to get down to Silicon Valley, to get over to San Francisco, to get up to Oakland. So we're very interested in that last mile. And we're looking at a couple of pilot programs, to how to better provide that last mile connectivity into the system.
Great. Well, thanks very much. Very much appreciate the comments from both of you and from Ms. Fernandez, who was here earlier as well. And before you all get up and take